Once a record's been produced, there's three major ways to promote it. Consumers can hear it on the radio, they can see it on video channels like MTV, or they can go to a live performance. If they're persuaded that the music is worth buying, then the CD has to be purchased in a local retail store. Each of these, radio, MTV, touring, retail, functions as a kind of gateway to get to consumers. It takes a great deal of investment to get the music in these places, and the major record labels have the most power to accomplish this. Looking at how songs get to be played on the radio shows how this power operates.
You hear the songs that you hear on the radio because they're paid for. Big business does business with big business. And usually big businesses and big businesses face all the time. So it's a big financial, heavy, hard stakes game.
It may not always be so plainly obvious, but our radio system is definitely not an open one. The music that you hear is not within listening range because of its quality. It's because most likely someone has sunk a few $1 million behind it, giving it that push, as they call it in radio. It's definitely not about whether a particular DJ likes the song. He may not have even heard the song. Most likely, the playlist was concocted by someone 3 or 4 ranks up who was instructed by his superior to add it to their playlist. In this kind of environment, truly independent releases or songs will inevitably fight an uphill battle for any kind of mainstream exposure.
The situation has reached such a scandalous proportion that Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Records, a notorious capitalist, he's certainly not a left-wing artist, is on record as saying that radio's killing the music industry because he can't break new acts in his record labels anymore. He can't break new genres. Radio doesn't give him any chance to expose new ideas anymore because these companies have found it so profitable simply to crank out a handful of songs in all their chain stations. The costs are so low and the profits are so high with advertising, but it's death for music, death for culture.
There used to be these sort of radio personalities who you at least wanted to believe were choosing their own music and playing stuff that they really loved. But now it's all pre-programmed. It's okay, you have to play the No Doubt single or the Bush single or the Limp Bizkit single every hour. And so it just doesn't feel creative or interesting. And you know there's no way that these DJs, all you have to do is listen to the sounds of their voices. And you know there's no way that they're gonna go into a record store and look for something. They don't have any control over what's played. It's just set out in front of them. It's all pre-recorded.
The passage of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which removed restrictions on the number of radio stations any one company could own, really accelerated this trend towards a closed system in radio, with a small handful of companies controlling a large number of stations. Clear Channel Communications, for example, now owns over 1,000 radio stations across the country, which results in a uniformity in the music played. So, you hear the same songs in the same order by the same artists announced by the same sounding DJs, no matter where you are in the country.
There's only 3 super corporations that own all the radio stations in the country. And to me, I think that's unconstitutional, misuse of the FCC signal, and criminal.
It's very difficult for independent music to get onto radio because the major labels work very closely with the radio stations to keep their stuff on the air. Major labels buy commercial time to advertise the artists on the air in a lot of different ways, and flying program directors out for weekend trips to exotic locations to meet the artist or whatever. And that's how it goes. And so it's not so much about just is the record good and are people responding to the record as much as it is how much is this label going to back us if we play this record.
One way to look at the degradation and corruption of music in the society is look at the issue of payola. Payola refers to the practice where record companies used to pay disc jockeys or media companies to play the music of their artist. So knowing that if it got played in the radio, then they could sell lots of records. In the 1950s, when rock and roll came along, this really emerged as a serious issue. It became a huge scandal. Disc jockeys were fired, they went to jail, they lost their jobs because they would accept money under the table to play someone's records. And the argument was, why the government made this such a serious case, why this was so heavily prosecuted, was that listeners had the right to think that the music they were hearing on the radio was selected by someone who knew music, who paid because they thought it was good music people wanted to hear, that you couldn't buy it. The integrity was at stake of the whole AM radio listening experience.
I know many people are going to say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, we're investigating it because it has occurred over the airwaves. And these are the property of the American people.
What's interesting is that payola now has returned in current times, and it's much larger than it ever was before, but now it's legal. Now you're allowed to do payola. And it's become a big part of it. But the difference, the money doesn't go to disc jockeys anymore. It goes to the media companies, the owners. Now that makes it okay. But we have now a fully commercialized system. When you're listening to music on the air, maybe it's there because someone thinks it's good music, but it's usually there for a couple of reasons. One, a marketing department has determined that advertisers can sell products on this in the target demographics. And two, in the case of payola, someone's actually paid them to play it. There's money in it for these companies. And we don't know how much there is. It's something that's very fuzzy. But a group like Limp Bizkit made their break basically through a pay-for-play or payola type system. This is commonplace.
Culturally, it's not having independent music kept out of the mainstream is something that makes music become so homogenous. People complain all the time. I hear it all the time. Like, all the songs sound the same. All the music sounds the same. And it's really true. It's all about, narrow casting and trying to find the right sound that's hot at the moment. And it's not about celebrating the diversity of music and culture that exists within our country and the world.